the rest of the world, we've got Trump indicates he'll try to pull U.S. out of NATO. President Trump has told Britain's Telegraph newspaper he could attempt to terminate American membership in the NATO defense alliance that the U.S. helped created more than 7 decades ago as the bulwark against the communist Soviet Union's expansion agenda in Europe. President Trump has railed against NATO allies for refusing to join the war against Iran, though he did not consult with them in advance or involve them in any planning for its economic and security fallout. Asked by the Telegraph's Washington correspondent if he would consider ending U.S. membership in the alliance after the Iran war, President Trump said, "Oh, yes, I would say it's beyond consideration. I was never swayed by NATO. I always knew they were a paper tiger, and Russian President Vladimir Putin knows that too, by the way. President Trump has disparaged the alliance for years, but he is not legally empowered to make such a change on his own. By law, to actually pull the U.S. from the alliance or suspend U.S. membership, he would have to gain the, quote, advice and consent of the Senate, unquote, with a two-thirds majority vote required to approve the move, according to Congress.gov, the official federal government website for legislation information. For NATO, allies trying, with less and less help from Washington, to assist Ukraine in Russia's ongoing full-scale invasion, the latest rhetoric blow from President Trump will be cause for yet more concern. For Russia's Putin, however, it will be a welcome news, as he has framed his invasion of neighboring Ukraine as a bid to stop NATO's eastward expansion, and who has worked through various means for years to undermine the alliance and sow division amongst its members. In his remarks to The Telegraph, President Trump equated the Ukraine and Iran war, saying he, quote, didn't insist too much, unquote, that NATO allies join the Iran conflict as, quote, I just think it should be automatic. We've been there automatically, including Ukraine. Ukraine wasn't our problem. It was a test, and we were there for them. And we would always have been there for them. They weren't there for us, unquote. Asked about President Trump's remarks, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Britain is, quote, fully committed to NATO, unquote, and called it, quote, the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. On that note, yeah, because we help a lot with that. Uh, so, again, this is not really that. I mean, we're not a political first channel. We mainly focus on economics, so we'll get that out of the way first. From the economic first principles perspective, a decision to leave NATO involves the allocation of scarce resources that have alternative uses. The cost of U.S. remaining in NATO is the value the alternative uses for the trillions of dollars and millions of personnel hours currently dedicated to the alliance. Okay, well, I should probably say this. I don't think we're pulling out of NATO, even if we could somehow get, I say we, I mean the United States, got like 3/4 Republican inside of the Senate. I don't think we'd be pulling out of NATO. Um, I mean, because like I think we've just been there for so long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would take either, I don't know. I guess we could. Trump's done a lot of crazy stuff for sure. The part with I do agree with Trump when he says like the Ukraine stuff. Like we've sent, like I think it's like what $250 billion to Ukraine. Uh, yeah, we sent like $250 to Ukraine. Again,
Yeah.
I'm pretty anti-intervention. That's not our problem. I know Russia is trying to get Ukraine, and there's something about like the some pipeline. I can't
Article
remember.
5. Well, there's the Budapest Memorandum, which was basically the U.S. negotiating with Russia back in, I believe, 2013, where we went, hey, Ukraine, we'll help and protect you if Russia invades you, so we're already obligated to help out with that. And then two,
Okay,
if Ukraine
okay.
becomes a member of the UN, there's Article 5, which is any attack on any member of or not the UN, if they become a part of NATO, there's Article 5 of NATO, which is, hey, any attack on any part of NATO is an attack on all of NATO, and all of NATO will be mobilized to stop it. which is why there was such big news, I think a year or two ago about like missiles being potentially found like in Poland because they are a NATO member, and that could have triggered Article 5. But like we are obligated by the Budapest Memorandum. This is why like the there's been so much contention around the U.S. helping because like we are legally obligated to like help out. Like the only reason that we've been able to sort of toe the line for not helping as much as we could is one, despite most of their nukes being non-functional, Russia still is technically a nuclear threat. And then
Mm-hmm.
additionally, um, it's it's not a war because it's a special military operation. But honestly, I'm pretty Ukraine pilled. I think we should be sending Zelensky F-22s and F-35s and B-25 bombers and B-2s and just we should just it would be over in like 2 days if we really put our backs into it and we wouldn't have to worry about nukes. Like, but the another issue you run into, right, is this is that you reignite the Taiwan problem, which is like if the U.S. jumps in really hard here, we're setting the precedent that, hey, for people we've said we'll protect and who are our allies, we will, move the full force of our nation against it. It turns Taiwan from a like simmering pot to a like very hot boiling one, which is another concern with this whole deal. Is like the precedent we set moving forward. Um, I'm a pretty hawkish person. I think we should this war should have been over in like 2024. We should have just mopped the floor. It should have been like we should have had a timer in DC, like in Washington that just goes, "All right, if Ukraine cannot wrap this up by X time, we will fulfill our obligations." And, stomp the lights out of Russia, and then if China wants to cause problems with Taiwan, we will destroy their country and hand it all over to Japan and Korea. Like there will be a greater South Korea surrounding North Korea and a greater Japan again. But it's there. I feel like this is a personal opinion. I feel like even any American president commentating on the war and be like, oh, we've done so much and nothing's happened. It's like, yeah, we've given $2 billion, but like, man, we're the biggest, richest country on earth, and also technically our obligation is bigger than that. So I don't know. It feels like it's a little bit important to me, but also I'm not happy with how Biden handled the whole thing. I think he should have been way more hawkish. I think he was too soft on it, but that's a me opinion. I don't know if that's the technically correct way to handle it.
I get it. I mean, like for at least like what I've stated with the like, in my opinion, it's kind of like the Iran thing. I prefer if we didn't go in, but if we're gonna go in,
Why are
like,
we half-assing it?
why? Yeah, why is it? And I do have a problem with the $250 billion going to Ukraine. Now that might just be money, but I do know that Zelensky didn't he like buy property or
I
like
don't.
yachts with the money?
I don't remember.
I remember there was a controversy. I think it was like last year that like we sent all this money and all the stuff that they bought with it did not equal that total. And then it was found out that he was buying like yachts or something like that with the money. I'd probably be more in your
Maybe.
boat with like don't send the money, send them, the weapons if needed. But again, with Ukraine stuff, it's either we're in or we're out. And obviously, it's now that one Budapest thing that you mentioned. Is that just the
Budapest
U.S. or
Memorandum.
is that all of
That is the
NATO?
U.S.
Just strictly U.S.
So yeah, it was a negotiation between the U.S. and Ukraine after the uh, stuff that there was a big like conflict that happened between Russia and Ukraine back in 2013 when Ukraine became an independent nation,
Yeah, I know there's like
a fully independent nation.
I was yeah, there was a civil war after that or something like that if I'm not mistaken. Well, not civil war, but I know there was like two sides.
Yeah.
But that was like 2015 ish. Yeah, but okay, so get back on the NATO stuff. Yeah, like even if we wanted to pull out NATO, like you said, we have contracts, we've got agreements that we've signed, and again, we're here to talk about the economics of it. Now, we do spend a lot of money on NATO. I think it's kind of unfair. If I'm not mistaken, don't we pay for other countries' memberships to be there, or at least like a portion of their memberships?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like, I don't like the concept of American taxpayer dollars being used to make sure that France can stay in NATO. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I kind of get it. You know what I mean? I do get the concept of what is it? Oh my god, I just lost it. You know, like we're paying a lot of it for you all to stay in here. I do know that we do have a lot of our military stationed overseas over places in case, something were to happen in their country, they do have American support right then and there. Uh I just how do I put this? How do I put this? It should be equal. I understand we're a larger country, so maybe if we have to pay a bigger portion of that pie, fine, I get it. But we shouldn't be paying for other portions of the pie.
At least if we can't leverage them.
Yeah, we can't leverage them
Like
for sure.
I am all on board with soft power and like picking up people's slack with the knowledge that, hey man, just so you know, I'm not doing this out of the kindness of my heart. There's like a I'm doing this because I want you to be my ally. I want you to stick around. But also, this is a favor, and I may call it in the future. And as long like again, I'm a big soft power guy. Let's resolve things in the American way through business and trade and totally upending your economy to serve our purpose because we're the freaking goat and you're
Mm-hmm.
not. So I'm all for soft power, but I also there needs to be soft power there. It can't just be like,
If I
oh,
need help,
we just do
I
this and
need
then
help.
we're never gonna call this in, right? You need to feel like there's a little bit of leverage going on here, which either means that you're going to pay it forward at some point of your own volition, right? You're helping us out with something that we didn't realize we need help with, or you make some like donation, or you make like you carve out some specific economic thing,
Yeah,
which
like
is generally
you don't
like
put
normal soft
tariffs on
power stuff.
us or
Right, or yeah, it's just there needs to be a little bit of quid pro quo here. Charity, not so great.
yeah
Or
for sure.
charity is good if it builds a reputation of that can be better leveraged. Like you can even do charity so long as you're leveraging a reputation.
Yeah, and I guess I have a note here. Like one of my problems with paying other countries to be there, and then I don't know, like again with Iran, I'd prefer if we weren't doing that. But if we're going to do that, let's full force it. And I would have liked the idea that I don't know, maybe some other country. Now, granted, we did a video like 2 weeks ago, like 20 nations were sending ships or whatever. So I don't know what's going on with those. But cause I'm pretty sure like the UK was one of the ships sending, one of the nations sending ships. But beside the point, like, so when it comes to like us spending more money via military operations, it says here, and then here it says governments often pay for large scale military commitments by creating more money or selling bonds, quote, going into debt, unquote, not quote, parentheses, rather than raising taxes, as raising taxes create, quote, political dangers, unquote, when the government creates more money for war materials while civilian goods become more scarce, that leads to inflation. So, like, I don't like the idea of, like, they're not paying their fair share. They aren't going to help us out in a war that should have lasted 2 weeks tops, if we're being
Hmm.
honest, because it's not just our oil at risk. It's 20% of the world's natural, 20% of the world's energy comes from there. I feel like, there should probably be help. I know we started it, whatever. Besides the point, we're all in this together. It's NATO. But if they aren't going to help, why is my goods and services going up in price, but we still pay them money. We still send them our stuff. When, again, I get it. We started the war. Whatever. Well, I mean, depends on how far back you want to go and what you want to believe. Sure. But let's say, we started this war for this instance. We're part of NATO. Come help us out. And then we're not saying like, send your whole military kind of between a soft and hard power. Like, hey, look at all the ships we have here. Open up the strait. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, to an extent, if I'm going to that full extent there, I'm okay. But one, I don't think we will. Two, I don't think we should because we also have. I know we talked about like, hey, if we're going to pay your way in, don't have tariffs on us. they do have tariffs on us. Why? But I mean, I get it. I'm not anti-tariff, so I get why they're doing it, but we shouldn't be paying their way in if they're going to put tariffs on us. We're going to send our military to essentially maybe risk their life in France. I would hate for any of our soldiers to die in France. What a terrible place to be.
God forbid.
God forbid. But they shouldn't have tariffs on us, as stated. Or we should have some other kind of deal. Or maybe, hey, we need to open up the strait again. Just send some ships, flex some muscle a little bit. If we're going to do it, do it. But, let's see. But I do have a final note here before we move on with that. Is that there are downsides, assuming it's a full withdrawal. Isolation is the enemy of productivity, and that the economy functions best as a, quote, vast network, unquote, of coordinated activities. A withdrawal from a major security network could be interrupted as a move towards economic isolation, potentially disrupting the, quote, balance of payments, unquote, and the secure flow of international investment. So, I mean, kind of like how we, what's it called? What was that thing called? I am pencil,
Hmm.
where it's like to make a pencil, it's got to go through like 6 different countries. I'm pretty sure those alliances are created for that purpose to be like, hey, you can't back out because you need us for this, that, and the other. Now, but on the flip side of that, this could create, if we do this in full withdrawal, because we are a superpower for sure. Um, this could create something called Strauss capitalism or stats capitalism, and this is where firms, or in this case it would be nations, try to cozy up to the U.S. To secure funding, trade, and military security. So we pull ideally, no again ideally, we pull out of NATO, so we no longer have these like, hey, we'll send you this, you send us this, back and forth. We make our own stuff, we use our own stuff, we produce our own stuff. Well, if they're gonna want to, ooh, I just hit my microphone. If they're gonna want to, do trade with us, because we're not part of NATO, we're not under any special contracts to be like, okay, well, we have to give Spain or France, a little more leeway when it comes to our trade. Now, if they want to trade with the U.S., and again, we are a superpower, there's no doubt about that. Now they have to kind of cozy up to us. You know what I mean? Now,
Hmm.
that's in a perfect we we run everything kind of scenario. But again, I don't know. I'm not too much into politics to understand what would happen if we pulled out of NATO. So yeah.
You're asking me?
Oh, I don't know. Do you want to say anything?
I mean, probably it's just a shrinking of American soft power. We just become more isolated. It'd be harder to negotiate treaties. We lose like vital supply lines for engagements. Like basically a whole bunch of stuff that we could have offloaded onto other nations, so it's less expensive for us. We now have to manage all on our own if we want to engage in conflicts overseas, or we want to engage in like securement of trade. Right? We don't have to worry about securing trade in the Baltic Sea because the the French and the English and the Germans do it for us. We don't have to worry about securing trade in the Mediterranean because the Italians and the Spanish do it for us. Like we don't have to worry about doing that type of stuff. Same thing with I think it's called Six Eyes in the Pacific. Japan and Korea are big important. In Australia are like important to securing trade. And if we were to break those contracts, or if we were to pull out of NATO, then it's our responsibility to secure our own trade all on our own without their help, which we can do, but is much, much more costly to your average. It is more expensive for your average American to individually secure all of our trade routes using our own military and our own navy and our own air force, generally our navy, than it is to pay like the extra 2% into NATO that like France or Italy or Austria aren't picking up. Like it's sort of this is sort of like part of the cost benefit analysis. It's like yeah, it's shitty that they don't do that, and we should probably try to get them to do that more. But also, man, that's so much cheaper. Even if it's like $1 billion, it's so much cheaper than trying to build out a navy large enough to secure our trade routes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. I
that would be
got
the
you.
downside of pulling out of NATO. It's just this. It'd be like it's like it's just a flat cost raise for every imported good. Now, granted, that might drive some industry back to the United States, but that would require. But again, Americans are not cheap to hire, so the cost goes up regardless. Um, if we pull out of NATO, you're right. Costs go up when we have to foot the bill for other people. Costs go up even more when we have to secure our own trade routes. At least that's my understanding of what would happen, and we would lose a lot of like geopolitical influence with like the EU, right? We couldn't make them do favorable trade stuff with us. It'd be kind of like us Brexiting, where like the problem with Brexit was like, so the complaints that happened that led to Brexit was like a bunch of Brits didn't like the fact that like there were immigrants, print read in this case as Poles and Hungars and Czechs, um, or Hungarians and Czechs coming into their nation and doing visa work. And so like actually, we don't like being a part of the EU. This is dumb. We're leaving. And they voted to leave the EU. Now the issue is Britain had probably the most favorable position in the EU. They didn't have to convert over to the euro, um, because they were the only nation that survived relatively unscathed from World War II, which is what led to the creation of the EU. So because they were the strongest economy going into the creation, they basically had the most leverage to build themselves out, the most beneficial position in the entire EU. But they didn't like their position, even though it was better than everyone else's. I used to have the details memorized, but part of it was their currency, part of it was their basically trade agreements. They basically like it cost them nothing, but they could still do some like protectionist stuff that other nations couldn't do under EU regulation. Um, and it was just basically a really, 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 really good position to be in because everyone else was locked into the contract, and it was worse for them if they tried to kick you out than it was for you to uh, than it was for them to like let you stick around with the advantages that you were able to negotiate because you were the strongest person in the negotiating room at the time of negotiations. And then the Brits didn't like that, so they voted for Brexit, and then they left the EU, and then they have faced a whole bunch of other economic issues because now they have to face different trade things, and they have to do currency. They had other currency issues because the currency wasn't like as well balanced against the euro, and there's a whole bunch of other negative stuff. And now they're still having problems with immigrants coming in to do the work, but this time it's immigrants parentheses read Indians and Africans. And the original complaints were like, well, we don't share anything culturally with these Hungarians and Czechs and Poles. Yeah, you thought that was bad? Dude, this Kazakhstani guy doesn't speak English, or this Indian dude doesn't speak English. Like you took what was an obnoxious problem, but one that was ultimately livable, and in trying to solve that, it's like it's like you get your toe, like you have an ingrown toenail, and you solve the problem by blowing your foot off with a shotgun. Like an attempt to solve this small problem, you have created a so much worse one. Um, that's bad in even similar ways to the problem you were trying to solve. Or yeah, like, and then the U.S. pulling out of NATO would be very similar to that, where it's like, you're right, there are problems. We do need to be more forceful. Maybe not more forceful. We need to like enforce it. Like, hey, this is an alliance. This is not a charity. We are here to help one another. Like this has to go both ways. I cannot continue, funding your part of the bill as you take that money that should go to helping all of us build a safer world to just paying for healthcare for your citizens. Like my citizens are footing your citizens' healthcare, and that's not fair to me, right? There needs to be conversations like that. Or hey, if you are
Hmm.
going to do that, then you need to be putting up other stuff like you need to be giving me extra special trade negotiations. You need to be giving me extra special, positions of political sway. You need to be like there needs to be a little quid pro quo here. That's fine if you don't want to pay your dues, but not paying your dues has to come with other forms of compensation, right? I need to have compensation here, or I need to have a very, very strong guarantee that when I say jump, you say how high. Like it cannot be when I say we're going to war, you get to go, no, I don't feel. It needs to be yes, America, right now, America. Like that's fine if you want to take that money to support your citizens. I'm totally chill with that. But I need compensation in other ways. I need other guarantees. Like if I choose to start to start an all-out war with China, you can't say, like if I make the stupid decision to go, you know what, we're gonna go full all-out crazy war with China. I can't have you because you chose to spend all the money on your citizens going. I think we're gonna sit this one out, guys. I think we're just gonna maybe nickel and dime away. No, it needs to be all right. Full wartime mobilization, or it could be like better trade agreements, right? Like We already have free trade, but I want priority market share, and I want priority. Hey, you know what? You don't want to pay in your dues? That's fine. Whenever your nation is considering sending out budgets for military construction for like aircraft, you have to go to my country's companies first. You don't get to go to your
Mm-hmm.
French aircraft building company first. You have to go to Northrop and Grumman, and you have to go to Boeing, and you have to go to Lockheed Martin first. You talk to my guys first. You don't talk to your guys. Like, that's the kind of stuff that would need to happen. I agree that there
Yeah.
are problems, and we do kind of pick up a lot of slack where maybe we shouldn't be. Um, but the inverse of this is now all of these things that these other nations do, even when they don't pay, all these other guarantees, all these other, maybe not niceties, but these other resources that we pull from this, better free trade, we don't need to constantly monitor a whole bunch of stuff. We basically Brexit ourselves, where it's like in an attempt to solve a small but manageable problem. We're taking a very extreme solution, parentheses, pulling out of NATO and making our life worse, parentheses, now having to secure all of our own trade routes and pulling out of like significant military advantages when it comes to strategies and when it comes to like training and all this other stuff and exchange and whatnot. Like we would lose access to, I believe, the Meteor missile, which is a European missile, and it's I believe, currently the best BVR air-to-air missile. BVR being beyond visual range. Basically, it's the best missile for fighting airplanes that you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we would lose access to it, and that's not great because they work awesome on F-35s and F-22s. And it would be a shame if the Meteors were limited to the, I don't remember what the name of the French aircraft is, but it'd be that and like Saabs. Um, and like Saabs are great aircraft, but they're not F-22s. Like there's just so many small things that we would miss out on, and like being able to like exchange research and being able to exchange, bullet like weapon platforms. Like NATO came up with 5.56. I mean, it was based off of the US 223, but like they came up with 5.56, and a 9 millimeter wasn't an American round. It wasn't an American standard round. I believe it was German. It's based off, it's 9 millimeter Parabellum was based off of I think it was either a German or Italian round. I think it was German. Like we would lose access to a whole bunch of like technology and exchange stuff that it's just nice to have around, and it's better for us to have it, especially with like job exchange and whatnot. Um, than to not have it. We need to do all of these things completely independently, which means we're probably just going to end up buying the stuff from them at full price as opposed to having them through like military research and equipment exchange at like heavily discounted rates and blah 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 blah.
Okay, yeah.
Like
I got you. I
imagine,
got you.
like how the U.S. gives F-16s to people because one, they're old and getting phased out, and then two, it's a way we can like project soft power. We would lose access to like being able to, one, project that soft power, and then two, potentially do the inverse. Let's say that like we've given away a lot of our F-16s, a bunch of them been decommissioned, and we need a fighter to fulfill that. So there's that one French aircraft that I can't remember the name of, but it's a Delta Wing, and it fills a very similar role as this small light fighter. And then there's the Saab 9. It's not the Saab 95. It's a Swedish aircraft. It's a Saab. It's another Delta Wing. But like if we run out of like F-18s and we run out of, well, F-18s are Navy planes mostly, but like, we've run out of F-16s and we need another fighter to do that. We either have to foot the bill to build a ton of them, or we could, if we are part of NATO, walk up to like Sweden or France and be like, hey, we would like to buy, or we would like you guys to donate or give us, or we'll give you X amount of munitions that we don't need anymore for you guys to use if you'll give us X amount of aircraft. So like we just lose out on a bunch of that stuff, and I think it'd be foolish and short-sighted and very Brexity of us to do so. But I understand where the frustration comes from, where it's like, yeah, we are kind of getting shafted, but I think there's ways to handle this that aren't like blow our foot off with a shotgun.
Fair, fair. Okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah, yeah, I can get behind that. I can get behind that. But yeah, that was a lot. Thanks. So you made a good point. Like it does cut us off from again, I made the point with the eye pencils that we do have those trades, so I guess it would cut us out pretty hard. But so yeah, that's what's happening. Let's see, give me a second. Go back to my